Like a parasite looking for a host, the empty man, a supernatural being, finds a man that's to become its new vessel. Will this man be able to escape this impending doom or resign to his fate? Hello and welcome to our channel. Today we'll recap and review an American supernatural horror film, The Empty Man. Let's check it out.
Okay, we are 5 miles from the nearest road, and I can't carry him anymore, not in this weather.
The movie starts in 1995 with a group of friends trekking in Ura Valley, Bhutan. Once they reached the top, they nervously cross a suspension bridge and reach the other side. The long and exhausting journey was worth it when they see the breathtaking view of the mountains of Bhutan. Unknown to them, day one starts and their time is ticking. While they're discussing their plans of going down, Paul shushes them down when he hears something from the mountains. However, his companions don't seem to hear what he's hearing. He walks further and falls on a crevice. His friends check on him, but he remains unresponsive. Greg immediately prepares his hiking gear and goes down to rescue him, while Fiona and Ruthie assist him. He finally finds Paul and sees an eerie sight in front of him. A skeleton that does not resemble any creature he's ever seen before. While Greg is horrified by the sight, Paul couldn't take his eye off the skeleton and his eyes start to well up.
Okay, you lost him, buddy. This is the part you should be climbing out and going down with your friends.
Greg gets taken aback when Paul whispers, "If you touch me, you'll die." Rather than a treat, this sounds like a warning from a friend. Instead of taking into mind what Paul has said, Greg continues to touch him, which makes Paul burst into tears, feeling defeated. He suddenly stops crying and stares into nothing, as if he's resigned to his fate. From concern, Greg gets annoyed thinking this is one of his friend's antics and carries him to safety and tries to return with Paul on his back. However, Greg is having a hard time carrying him on his back, and the weather has gotten progressively worse. Ruthie finds an abandoned cabin nearby, and they decide to make it their temporary shelter. While Fiona goes out to get some clean water and Ruthie finds a flute in Paul's hands and keeps it. Greg checks his body and finds scars on his wrists. While Ruthie is having a meltdown about Paul's situation, Greg assures her that they'll get help the next day. The night came and Ruthie couldn't sleep, so she plays the flute she found.
Really, Ruthie? You're putting your mouth near that thing? Don't do this at home, or anywhere else.
While dozing off, she was awakened by footsteps but found nothing. Day 2 has come, and despite the snowstorm, Greg and Fiona go out of the cabin to ask for help, leaving Ruthie behind. While cleaning up, Ruthie sees a figure amid the snowstorm. Thinking it's her friends, she goes out to meet them only to see an unknown figure charging towards her. She runs back to the cabin, locks the door, and gets a knife to defend herself. The banging on the doors continues, so she yells at it to go away. However, the banging turns out to be Greg asking her to let them in. When the two enter, it turns out that Ruthie is in hallucination, and it was Greg and Fiona that she saw. Fiona calms her down, but she gets upset and insists that they have to leave. The night came once again, and Ruthie couldn't even catch a good night's sleep as Paul whispers incomprehensible words into her ear. The next day, they found that Paul is gone. They follow his tracks on the snow and find him seated in front of the bridge, where he's blowing the flute. While Fiona is concerned, Greg starts to let out all of his complaints about Paul during their friendship and calls him selfish. However, he stops when Ruthie stabs him in the back and pushes him off the mountain cliff. She also takes out Fiona by slashing her in the throat and pushing her to her death. Ruthie takes one look at Paul before jumping off the cliff herself. Paul, who remains passive despite this tragic event, starts playing the flute again. The movie time skips to 2018. In Missouri, a man is jogging, but he gets gradually faster until he's running as if someone's pursuing him. A voice also plays asking, "Where were you?" He is James, a former detective. He goes to a local diner and pays for his meal with a birthday coupon, only to get embarrassed when the staff comes out to sing for him. He goes back home where he sees his friend, Amanda, sitting in his backyard. Amanda checks up on him as it has almost been a year since the death of his son and wife. Since Amanda has also lost her father, she shares she's coped by thinking nothing is real and proposing that their thoughts begin somewhere else. James laughs, saying he doesn't know what she's talking about, but Amanda says that he does. Their talk is interrupted when Amanda's mom calls for her, so she leaves. James goes back inside, and the voice saying, "Where were you?" continues to echo in his head that it even wakes him up in the middle of the night. Because of his current mental state, James takes prescription medicines. Day 1 starts. Nora, Amanda's mom, suddenly finds that her daughter and her things missing and a scary message on the bathroom mirror. She calls for James to ask for his help and support. Upon seeing her distraught state, James comforts her with an intimate hug.
Insert side-eye emojis. This doesn't look like a neighborly hug.
James starts to investigate and finds the text, "The empty man made me do it," written in blood on the bathroom mirror. The detectives finally come, and after getting the blood sample from the mirror, they explain to Nora that based on the evidence, Amanda might have run off. Realizing that the detectives will not do anything about her disappearance, James proposes that he'll investigate on his own and goes to Amanda's school where he fetches Devara, one of Amanda's close friends. Before asking her about Amanda, James secretly records their conversation. Amanda, on the other hand, sees a black figure nearby. Even if she's anxious about it, she dismisses it when it disappeared. During their talk, James discovers the Empty Man, a local legend. The legend says that if you went to a bridge during the night and blow into an empty bottle while thinking about Empty Man, something will happen. Devara adds that she did this 2 days ago with her friends. She tells James that the last time she saw Amanda was at the mall whispering something to their friend, Brandon's ear, but she didn't talk to her. This is the second day, and here you can see the pattern of events from 1995. After talking to her, James goes to Brandon's house only to discover that he is missing too. He also goes to her other friend's house and finds a Pontifex Institute brochure, the same brochure he saw on Amanda's desk with the word Tulpa written behind it. When he couldn't find her friends, he decides to go to the bridge on his own. He finds the same bottle they have used and did the same ritual just like Amanda and her friends had done it.
What did we say about pointing things at your mouth? Especially things that came from somewhere we don't know?
James gets an eerie feeling and goes under the bridge. To his horror, he suddenly finds the hanged bodies of Amanda's friends and the same words, "The empty man made me do it." James calls for the authorities to retrieve the bodies. Despite being aware of the empty man, the police ruled their deaths as suicide because this might incite fear in the community. That same night, Devara also dies with empty man's influence. Realizing the severity of the situation, James looks up Pontifex Institute and discovers a cult with a tainted reputation due to the numerous deaths linked to them. He also looks up Tulpa and details about it. Some of the words are familiar as Amanda has told him about these things before she disappeared. Nora comes to his house where he comforts her intimately. Due to this, the two almost get into a moment, but they abruptly stop to remind themselves of the boundaries. It appears that the two had an affair and he was making love with Nora the day his family died. That night, he dreams of the day his family died and a chair in an empty room. Despite the guilt he's feeling, he gets up to defend himself when he thinks there's an intruder in the house. However, he only finds his front door open and nothing else. The next day, he goes to Pontifex Institute. He gets weirded out by the questionnaire given to him, so he discards it before listening to a talk by the cult leader, Arthur Parsons. He references the empty man as a meditation for targeted manifestation, but other than that, James didn't get much from him. However, he gets confused when Arthur tells him that he's glad that he came back, even if James has never been there before. Convinced that something's wrong with this cult, he sneaks inside its premises and discovers living quarters and men repeating after the voice, reciting a mantra that says nothing exists. However, he gets discovered and escorted out of the place. Outside the building, he sees the man that he asked earlier about Amanda, but he lies about knowing her as he is now revealing that Amanda is one of the more important members of the cult. He tells him that Amanda is in a Pontifex camp and warns James how dangerous this cult is, but James ignores it and asks for the address of the camp. He heads there alone and finds it in the middle of the woods. He enters one and goes through its files where he finds documents containing Amanda's information. James also finds some tapes and discovers the darkest parts of the cult practices.
At this point, you'd think he'd go home and conclude that this is a big mistake, because that's the normal response to these things.
Instead, he goes to another side of the camp where the members are doing repeated chants around the fire. James was about to leave when the members discovered his presence and goes after him. He successfully escapes and reported this strange occult behavior to the police, but instead, he gets scolded for his interference in an ongoing investigation. He also informs Nora that Amanda joined a dangerous cult and takes her to a hotel as he thinks she's in danger. That night, he gets the same nightmare about the night his family died and the chair. Once again, he thinks there's an intruder as a shadow appears and disappears instantly, and instead he sees the same tattered bear plushie outside on his doorstep. Day 3, once again, the dreaded day. James tails a group of cult members and he reaches St. Lau's Hospital where they see them bowing to a bedridden man. Later that day, he abducts the same guy that told him about the camp and reveals to James that the bedridden man is their antenna. As James grows more confused, he grows more violent as he starts to threaten the guy by holding him at gunpoint. The guy starts to point out that James has been having dreams like a deja vu and starts to share their philosophy. James grows disoriented and fed up with their philosophy. That night, he goes back to the Pontifex Institute to look for more information about the dreaded man. However, out of everything he's seen, what he sees next bewilders him the most. A document containing everything about him, the life he's led, even the littlest things such as the birthday coupon he used, and things that should only be between him and his family. He gets more confused when he sees pictures of himself sitting in the chair that's been appearing in his reoccurring dreams. On his way to the hospital, memories and repeated words that are all over the place come to him, particularly the voice that tells him that on the third day he finds you. James finally arrives at the hospital and questions the nurse about the bedridden patient while posing as a detective. Based on this information, it turns out that this man is Paul. He goes to the ICU where he finally finds Amanda, who is looking over Paul. James asks her if he knows who this man is, but she replies that he knows who he is. Just like the guy earlier, Amanda says that he transmits and they receive. James calls Nora, but she drops the call as she doesn't recognize him, as if they never truly met. Amanda then tells him that Paul is weakening and that they need a replacement, so they decided to make one. Right after she said it, Paul weakens and sits on a chair while voices continuously drown his mind, like an itch to his brain. He curses Amanda, saying what she's telling him is not real, but she reveals to him that everything in his life isn't real and their cult conjured him into being. Everything that he knows about his life, every moment, every interaction was just inside his head, and in reality, he's only been living as his own person for only 3 days. Amanda further tells him that they're his tulpa, that he is not on his own, but rather their possession, their new vessel. They were able to build this connection because of his sorrow and guilt from losing his family. Once again, he finds himself in front of the chair as it changes into the same skeleton in Bhutan. The empty man emerges from there and chases him down to enter his body. As James continues to drown in his grief, the empty man successfully possesses his body. In the end, James executes Paul as the cult members acknowledge him as their new vessel.
If you like breaking down horror movies based on philosophical analysis, or just want a really good mind-boggling scare, well, you found your perfect movie. Gather your friends, family, or anyone for this, because you'll need a companion to go through this. Or maybe just watch it yourself, if you enjoy that, you maniac. Please subscribe to our channel to be notified when we upload. And don't forget to suggest movies you want us to recap in the future in the comments down below.